The surgery was going perfectly until minute 47. Dr. Richard Harrison, the hospital's most celebrated neurosurgeon, felt his hands begin to shake. A 7-year-old girl's life hung in the balance. The operating room fell into tense silence. That's when a voice spoke up from the corner. Not from any of the surgical team, but from the janitor who'd been quietly cleaning the observation area. And what he said next would change everything. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoyed the story, please consider subscribing to hear more tales of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight. At St. Catherine's Medical Center, the night shift held a different rhythm than the bustling chaos of daytime operations. The fluorescent lights hummed quietly in empty corridors, and the only sounds were the distant beeps of monitoring equipment and the soft footsteps of essential personnel making their rounds. Marcus Reed pushed his cleaning cart down the surgical wing's main hallway, his movements methodical and practiced after 3 years of working the same route. At 29, he had the lean build of someone who spent his nights on his feet, moving equipment and supplies that weighed more than most people realized. His dark hair was always hidden beneath a worn baseball cap, and he kept his eyes focused on his work, rarely making eye contact with the medical staff who hurried past him to owe everyone at St. Catherine's. Marcus was furniture, background noise. The quiet janitor who appeared after the day shift went home and disappeared before the morning rounds began. Nurses stepped around him without acknowledgement. Doctors discussed cases in his presence as if he weren't there. He was part of the hospital's infrastructure, as invisible and unremarkable as the air conditioning system. But Marcus saw everything. He noticed which surgeons stayed late reviewing patient files, which residents struggled with the pressure of their training, and which families sat in waiting rooms long after visiting hours, too worried to leave. 3 years of night shifts had given him an encyclopedia of observations that no one knew he possessed. On Tuesday evening, Dr. Richard Harrison arrived at the hospital with his usual commanding presence. At 52, Harrison was St. Catherine's chief of neurosurgery and arguably the most skilled surgeon on the East Coast. His reputation for performing impossible procedures had earned him speaking engagements at medical conferences worldwide. Patients traveled from other countries specifically to be operated on by his hands. Harrison's surgical schedule that evening included a particularly challenging case. 7-year-old Emma Chun, who had been diagnosed with a rare arteriovenous malformation deep within her brain. The cluster of abnormal blood vessels threatened to rupture at any moment, which would likely result in a catastrophic stroke. The surgery required navigating through millimeters of healthy brain tissue to reach the malformation without causing permanent damage. Emma's parents, David and Lynn Chun, had been living at the hospital for the past week, sleeping in chairs and surviving on cafeteria coffee while their daughter underwent various preparatory procedures. David worked as an accountant and Lynn taught elementary school. Neither had any medical background, but they had researched Emma's condition obsessively, printing out medical journals and asking questions that revealed their desperate attempt to understand what their daughter was facing. Marcus had observed the Chin family during his nightly rounds. He had seen David pacing the surgical waiting area at 2 a.m., unable to sleep. He had noticed Lynn reading the same medical article repeatedly, her lips moving silently as she tried to memorize terms she didn't fully understand. Their daughter's laughter, when she felt well enough to play with the toy dinosaurs her grandmother had brought, echoed through the pediatric wing and reminded everyone why they had chosen to work in medicine. The surgical team that Tuesday evening represented the best St. Catherine's had to offer. Dr. Jessica Martinez, the chief resident in neurosurgery, had been specifically requested by Harrison for her steady hands and quick thinking under pressure. Nurse Patricia Wong had assisted on more complex brain surgeries than anyone else in the hospital, her ability to anticipate a surgeon's needs bordering on telepathic. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Michael Thompson, was known for his ability to maintain patients in the precise state of unconsciousness required for delicate neurological procedures. At 8:47 p.m., Emma Chun was wheeled into Operating Room 7, the hospital's most advanced surgical suite. Her parents had spent the previous hour telling her stories about brave princesses and magical adventures, trying to keep her spirits up despite their own terror. Emma had hugged her stuffed elephant, Mr. Peanuts, until the last possible moment before the anesthesia team took over. Marcus was cleaning the adjacent hallway when he heard the surgical doors close. Through the observation window, he could see the team beginning their preparations. The massive surgical lights cast everything in harsh white illumination, and the monitors displayed Emma's vital signs in steady green and blue lines. Dr. Harrison began the procedure with his characteristic confidence. His initial incision was precise, and his movements through the preliminary stages showed the expertise that had made him famous. The surgical team worked in harmony, each member anticipating the other's needs with outspoken communication. For the first 45 minutes, everything proceeded according to plan. Harrison navigated through the layers of tissue with microscopic precision, using advanced imaging to guide his approach toward the arteriovenous malformation. The monitors showed Emma's vital signs remaining stable, and the atmosphere in the operating room was one of focused calm. Marcus had moved his cleaning supplies into the observation area, a small room adjacent to the main surgical suite where medical students and visiting physicians could watch procedures without interfering. The room was empty that evening, but hospital policy required it to be cleaned during night shift hours. As he worked, Marcus found himself glancing through the window at the surgery in progress. 18:47. Something changed. Dr. Harrison had reached the most critical phase of the procedure, where he would need to carefully separate the malformed blood vessels from healthy brain tissue. The margin for error was measured in fractions of millimeters. One wrong movement could result in a hemorrhage that would end Emma's life within minutes. It was then that Harrison felt the first tremor in his right hand. The tremor was subtle initially, barely perceptible even to Harrison himself, but as he attempted to continue with the delicate dissection, the shaking became more pronounced. His instruments, which normally moved with the precision of a master craftsman, began to waver. Dr. Martinez, who was assisting, noticed immediately. "Doctor?" she asked quietly, her voice betraying concern. Harrison tried to compensate, adjusting his grip and attempting to steady his hand against the surgical field. But the tremor persisted, and with each passing second, it became more obvious to everyone in the room. Nurse Wong watched the monitors, noting that Emma's vital signs remained stable, but understanding that the situation in her brain was becoming increasingly precarious with each moment of delay. Dr. Thompson, the anesthesiologist, looked up from his equipment. "Is everything all right?" Harrison's face had grown pale. In 30 years of surgery, he had never experienced anything like this. His hands, which had performed thousands of operations, were betraying him at the most critical moment of a child's life. The operating room fell into tense silence. The only sounds were the quiet beeps of Emma's monitors and the soft hiss of the ventilation system. Everyone present understood the gravity of the situation, but no one knew what to do. It was then that a voice spoke from the observation room. "Your hand is shaking, doctor." The words cut through the silence like a blade. Every head in the operating room turned toward the source of the voice, but it was impossible to see into the dimly lit observation area through the surgical light's glare. "Who said that?" Harrison demanded, his voice tight with frustration and fear. Marcus stepped closer to the observation window, becoming visible to the surgical team for the first time. His cleaning uniform and the cart behind him made his identity unmistakable. "The janitor," Dr. Martinez whispered in disbelief. Harrison stared at Marcus through the window. "This is a sterile operating room. You need to leave immediately." But Marcus didn't move. Instead, he looked directly at Harrison and said, "You're having a benign essential tremor, probably triggered by caffeine intake and stress. It's temporary, but you need to adjust your technique." The operating room erupted in confused murmurs. Nurse Wong looked between Marcus and Harrison, uncertain how to respond to this unprecedented situation. "What did you just say?" Harrison asked, his voice barely audible. Marcus moved closer to the window, his voice calm and clear. "You've been drinking coffee since 6 a.m. I've watched you. 4 cups during your pre-surgery meetings, 2 more while reviewing Emma scans. Your hands are shaking because of caffeine toxicity combined with performance anxiety. You can still complete the surgery, but you need to modify your approach." Dr. Martinez stared at Marcus in shock. "How do you know medical terminology?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, as if deciding whether to reveal something he had kept hidden. Finally, he spoke. Because I'm a doctor. The revelation hit the operating room like a physical blow. Harrison's instruments remained suspended over Emma's exposed brain as he processed what he had just heard. That's impossible, Dr. Thompson said. You're a janitor. Marcus looked directly at Harrison. Dr. Marcus Reed, Johns Hopkins Medical School, class of 2018. Neurosurgery residency, first year completed at Baltimore General. I've been watching you operate for 3 years, Dr. Harrison. I know your techniques better than your residents do. Harrison's mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. Why are you working as a janitor if you're a doctor? Marcus's expression grew somber. My father was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's when I was in my 2nd year of residency. My mother couldn't handle his care alone. I had to choose between my medical career and my family. I chose my family. The operating room remained silent as the implications of this revelation settled over everyone present. But Emma is going to die if you don't let me help you, Marcus continued. The arteriovenous malformation is more extensive than your imaging showed. You're approaching it from the wrong angle. Harrison looked down at Emma's small form on the operating table, then back at Marcus. You can see the malformation from there? Marcus shook his head. I can't see it, but I've been reading Emma's case files. I have access to the hospital's computer system for cleaning schedules, and I may have accessed more than just cleaning schedules. The imaging from yesterday shows a secondary cluster that wasn't noted in the surgical plan. Dr. Martinez checked the surgical monitors. How do you know there's a secondary cluster? Because I've seen this exact type of AVM before, Marcus replied. During my residency in Baltimore, the patient was a 9-year-old boy with identical presentation. The primary cluster was obvious, but there was a smaller secondary formation that fed into it. If you don't address both, the secondary will enlarge and rupture within weeks. Harrison's hands had stopped shaking as he focused on Marcus's words. Where is this secondary cluster? Marcus pointed to a specific area on Emma's exposed brain. 2 millimeters posterior to your current position, slightly deeper. You'll need to extend your approach by approximately 4 millimeters and use a different angle to access it safely. Harrison stared at the area Marcus had indicated. His trained eye began to see subtle signs he had missed before, tissue patterns that suggested Marcus might be correct. This is insane, Dr. Martinez whispered. We're taking surgical advice from a janitor. A janitor who's also a doctor, Marcus corrected, and who has been studying Emma's case more carefully than anyone else in this hospital. Harrison made a decision that would either save Emma's life or end his career. Security, this is, or 7. I need the observation room unlocked immediately. Within minutes, Marcus Reed stood at the scrub sink, washing his hands with the methodical precision of someone who had performed the ritual thousands of times. His movements were automatic, muscle memory from years of medical training taking over despite the 3-year gap since his last surgery. The surgical team watched in stunned silence as Marcus donned sterile gloves and gown. His transformation from invisible janitor to medical professional was startling. His posture changed. His movements became more confident, and his voice took on the authority of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. Dr. Reed, Harrison said formally, acknowledging Marcus's medical credentials for the first time. Show me this secondary cluster. Marcus approached the operating table and looked down at Emma's exposed brain. For a moment, his professional composure wavered as he saw the small girl whose laughter he had heard in the corridors, now completely dependent on their skill and judgment. There, he said, pointing to an area that appeared normal to the untrained eye. The vessel patterns are slightly asymmetrical. See how the arterial branching changes direction right here? That's feeding into a smaller AVM formation. Harrison adjusted his surgical microscope and peered closer. Gradually, he began to see what Marcus was describing. The subtle signs of abnormal blood vessel formation became clear once he knew where to look. You're right, Harrison said quietly. How did we miss this? Because it wasn't clinically significant on the original imaging, Marcus replied. It only becomes visible when you account for the growth patterns of pediatric AVMs. Children's blood vessels develop differently than adults. What looks like normal branching in a child might actually be pathological. Dr. Martinez leaned closer to examine the area. If we address both formations simultaneously, what's the procedural risk? Marcus calculated quickly. Extended surgical time increases anesthesia risk, but leaving the secondary cluster untreated guarantees future rupture. The choice is between a longer surgery now or a catastrophic stroke in 3 to 6 weeks. Harrison nodded grimly. Dr. Martinez, extend our surgical field. We're going after both clusters. For the next 4 hours, Marcus Reed worked alongside Dr. Harrison with a coordination that surprised everyone in the operating room. Despite his 3-year absence from surgery, his technical skills were remarkably preserved. His hands moved with confidence and precision as he assisted with the delicate work of separating abnormal blood vessels from healthy brain tissue. Clamp, Harrison requested, and Marcus anticipated the need, having the correct instrument ready before the words were spoken. Suction here, Marcus indicated, pointing to an area where fluid was obscuring their view. The surgical team gradually accepted Marcus's presence, recognizing that his expertise was genuine and his assistance invaluable. Nurse Wong found herself working with 2 surgeons instead of 1, adapting her instrument management to accommodate the unexpected addition to their team. Dr. Thompson monitored Emma's anesthesia carefully, adjusting medications to maintain her stable condition throughout the extended procedure. Vitals are holding steady, he reported at regular intervals. At 2:30 a.m. Dr. Harrison successfully removed the final portion of the secondary AVM cluster. The abnormal blood vessels that had threatened Emma's life were gone, and healthy brain tissue remained intact. Closure, Harrison announced, beginning the process of carefully repairing the layers of tissue they had opened. Marcus assisted with the closing procedures, his suturing technique drawing appreciative nods from the experienced surgical team. His movements were economical and precise, demonstrating skills that clearly hadn't deteriorated during his years away from medicine. At 3:15 a.m. Emma Chun was wheeled into the recovery room, her surgery completed successfully. Both AVM clusters had been removed without complication, and her prognosis was excellent. Dr. Harrison and Marcus stood side by side at the scrub sink, removing their surgical gloves in the quiet aftermath of the operation. The intensity of the previous hours had created an unusual bond between them, the shared experience of saving a child's life transcending their vastly different circumstances. Why didn't you tell anyone you were a doctor? Harrison asked finally. Marcus dried his hands slowly, considering his answer. Because I'm not a doctor anymore. I'm a son taking care of his father and a janitor earning a paycheck to support my family. The person who performed surgery tonight was someone I used to be. Harrison studied Marcus's face. But you clearly haven't lost your skills. Why not return to medicine? Marcus's expression grew sad. My father's condition is progressive. He needs constant supervision now. My mother works during the day, so I sleep and take care of him. The night shift here was the only job that allowed me to contribute financially while maintaining my family responsibilities. There have to be other options, Dr. Martinez said, having overheard their conversation. Part-time positions, consulting work, something that would let you use your medical training. Marcus shook his head. I've looked. Medical positions require full commitment, on-call availability, and licensing maintenance that I can't afford. Being a janitor is honest work, and it pays enough to help my family. I made peace with that choice. Dr. Harrison was quiet for several minutes, clearly thinking. What if there were other options? Marcus looked at him questioningly. The hospital has been discussing creating a medical consultant position, Harrison continued. Someone who could review complex cases, provide second opinions, and assist with difficult procedures on an as-needed basis. The position would be part-time with flexible scheduling, and it would pay considerably more than janitorial work. Marcus stared at Harrison in disbelief. You're talking about creating a job for me? I'm talking about recognizing that this hospital has been wasting an extraordinary resource for 3 years, Harrison replied. Your insights tonight saved Emma's life. How many other patients might benefit from your expertise if we found a way to use it properly? Dr. Martinez nodded enthusiastically. The Chief of Staff has been complaining about our consultation expenses. Having an in-house specialist available for complex cases would save the hospital significant money. Marcus felt a surge of hope that he quickly tried to suppress. My father's condition. The position would be designed around your availability, Harrison assured him. Day shift, flexible hours, work-from-home options for case reviews. We'd make it work. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus allowed himself to imagine returning to medicine. Not as the full-time surgeon he had once been, but as something new, a hybrid role that would let him serve patients while maintaining his family responsibilities. I would need to maintain my janitorial position until the consultant role was officially approved, Marcus said practically. Of course, Harrison agreed. But in the meantime, I'd like you to review some of our challenging cases. Unofficially as a second opinion. No patient contact, just case analysis and recommendations. Marcus nodded slowly. I'd like that. I've missed thinking about medicine. At 6 a.m., as the day shift began arriving at St. Catherine's Medical Center, Marcus Reed resumed his role as the night janitor. He pushed his cleaning cart down the same corridors he had traveled for 3 years, past the same nursing stations and through the same departments. But everything had changed. David and Lin Chun sat in the surgical waiting room, where they had spent the longest night of their lives. Dr. Harrison approached them with the news they had been praying for. The surgery was successful, he told them. We were able to remove all of the abnormal blood vessels, and Emma's prognosis is excellent. Lin Chun broke down in tears of relief, while David hugged Dr. Harrison with gratitude that words couldn't express. There's something else you should know, Harrison continued. Your daughter's surgery was more complex than we initially realized. We discovered a secondary formation that could have been life-threatening if left untreated. Fortunately, we had additional expertise available that allowed us to address both issues simultaneously. The Chens listened intently as Harrison explained how an unexpected consultant had identified the hidden danger and assisted with Emma's surgery. He didn't mention that the consultant was the hospital's night janitor, only that their daughter had benefited from exceptional medical care. Emma Chun recovered beautifully from her surgery. Within a week, she was back to playing with Mr. Peanuts and asking when she could return to school. Her parents took turns sitting beside her hospital bed, reading her favorite stories and marveling at the miraculous second chance they had been given. Marcus continued working his night shift, but now he carried a tablet computer that allowed him to access medical records and case files. During quiet periods, he reviewed complex cases and provided written consultations to Dr. Harrison and other department heads. His insights proved invaluable repeatedly. He identified medication interactions that had been overlooked, suggested alternative diagnostic approaches for puzzling cases, and provided treatment recommendations that improved patient outcomes throughout the hospital. 3 months after Emma's surgery, the hospital administration officially approved the creation of a medical consultant position, with Marcus Reed as the first appointee. The role allowed him to maintain his flexible schedule while contributing his medical expertise to patient care. Dr. Harrison often told colleagues about the night when the hospital's janitor had revealed himself to be one of the most insightful physicians he had ever worked with. But Marcus preferred to remain in the background, contributing to patient care without seeking recognition or credit. Emma Chun returned to St. Catherine's for follow-up appointments every 6 months. She always asked to see all the doctors who helped me, though she never fully understood why one of them had been introduced to her as a maintenance consultant rather than a surgeon. Marcus would visit with Emma during these appointments, bringing her small gifts and listening to her stories about school and friends. Her complete recovery stood as a testament to what was possible when skill, dedication, and unexpected collaboration came together in service of healing. The hospital's night shift continued its quiet rhythm, but now Marcus Reed moved through those corridors with a different sense of purpose. He was still the night janitor, still invisible to most people, still cleaning floors and emptying trash. But he was also Dr. Reed, the consultant who helped solve medical puzzles and save lives. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are hidden in the most ordinary places. Sometimes the person who can save a life is the one no one expects. And sometimes, when the world needs a miracle, it comes from the corner of the room where someone has been waiting quietly, ready to step forward when called upon. Marcus Reed learned that leaving medicine didn't mean medicine had to leave him. It just meant finding new ways to serve, new ways to heal, and new ways to make a difference in the lives of people who needed hope. Emma Chun grew up healthy and strong, never knowing that her life had been saved by a man who chose love over career, family over recognition, and service over glory. But she carried with her the gift of possibility, the knowledge that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and that heroes don't always wear the clothes you expect them to wear in the quiet corridors of St. Catherine's Medical Center, where the night shift holds its own rhythm and the fluorescent lights hum their familiar song. Marcus Reed continues his work, part janitor, part doctor, completely dedicated to healing in whatever form it takes. And every time he passes Operating Room 7, he remembers the night when everything changed, when a child's life hung in the balance, and when stepping out of the shadows meant stepping back into the light of purpose he thought he had lost forever.